Gridiron Warrior podcast is built for strength and football coaches who want to run the best possible programs for their athletes and their communities. Each episode delivers simple, practical coaching advice that transfers straight from the weight room to the field. No theory, no fluff, no fancy words, just real world strategies from coaches that are living it. So you can build stronger, faster, more durable athletes at any level. From the beginning, I've committed to only bringing on sponsors that I myself use and would confidently recommend to any coach. And that's why I'm fired up to partner with Train Heroic. Train Heroic is the platform I use to write programs, run my own training, and deliver workouts to athletes and whole teams. It's clean, it's coach friendly, and your athletes are actually going to go in the app and use it and enjoy it, compared to some of the other ones that are out there. If you're a strength coach looking for a better way to program and get that information to your athletes, or if you're a coach and you just want, plug and play, ready to go training programs that you don't have to build, Train Heroic is it, okay? And here's the kicker for anyone that is a supporter of the Gridiron Warrior. Start a free 90-day trial of Train Heroic using the link, trainheroic.com/Gridiron Warrior, and I'll drop 2 12-week training programs right into your account so that you don't have to start from scratch. You can start with 2 12-week programs built in there, tweak them, change them, customize them, and get a good feel of using the app. And those will be in there for you, so you can use those. So head to www.trainheroic.com/Gridiron Warrior, start your 90-day free trial, and reply to your welcome email saying that you want those 2 12-week training programs from me, and I'll make sure you get those. If you're a high school coach trying to bring structure and feedback to your jump and speed training, you need to check out the Plyomat. The switch mat technology is precise, durable, and it's far more reliable than those laser-based systems. More importantly, the feedback is instant. Your jump height, your contact time, RSI, it's all shown on the remote, the controller, and it's logged in their app as well. You can use it every single day as a checkpoint. Are your athletes hitting plyo numbers or thresholds? We use it in season to gauge readiness. You can check their ground reaction force and see if their springs are there as well. It's something that you'll bring out and use every single day in the weight room. If you follow Rich Burnett, the founder, you already know that the education piece is big too. He's a high school guy at heart, and so is the company. So, Plyomat is there to provide everything that we talk about in Gridiron Warrior, actionable results, real service, great customer service, and they're trying to bring jump training to the next level. So happy to support them. Check out the Plyomat. Today on the podcast, we have Mike Niklos, and he's the Director of Athletic Development at Acceleration Sports Performance. Him and I go way back on social media. We've been talking for a while. He does a great job with speed, agility work. He's a former defensive back himself, so he understands football at a high level. So we get into today talking about how do you actually get speed, and we've talked about this so many times on the podcast, speed that transfers more than just doing drills. And we talk about it from a strength and conditioning side of things, but also from a football side of things. How do you take something, and we'll use the W drill for an example, how do you make the W drill better? How do you make it something that's going to show up and make a difference on Friday night? So this was a great episode. We got into it really well. We're going to do a part 2 someday in the future, but Coach Mike Niklos, I hope you guys enjoy. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Gridiron Warrior podcast. Today, I have Coach Mike Niklos on the podcast, Director of Athletic Development. I always got to get the titles right. Director of Athletic Development at Acceleration Sports Performance. Yes?
Yes. Actually,
Awesome.
I stole that one from the LSU staff. I absolutely love that because, yes, strength coach, yes, conditioning coach, but at the end of the day, we're here to develop athletes.
It's been funny. Past couple people we've had on the podcast, it's like, I don't care, whatever you want to call me whatever you want to call me. But at the same time, I do like the idea of having a formal title like athletic development, sports performance, because it shows that you're more than just, the weight room. We're moving past that. I think it's something that if we're going to do it, we need to do it as an entire industry. We need to commit to that. You don't call an athletic trainer one thing, and then you call an athletic trainer at a different school the sports medicine specialist. No, you call athletic trainers, and we're not there yet.
Exactly.
We're too many.
Yeah.
That's a different discussion for a different
That's
day.
a whole different, we'll get in that.
That'd be a whole podcast in itself. But Coach, I'm going to pass it off to you. You tell us as much of your story as you want. Tell us where you've been, Your background in football, where are you at now?
Awesome. Awesome. So grew up in born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. Was a multi-sport athlete at a local school there. I was a football, wrestling, track, and baseball. Baseball was probably my favorite love. I was just a lot better at football. Though I graduated at, I was 5'7", 135 pounds, so very undersized to play football. And at the time, my brother was playing for the St. Louis Rams, and Torrey Holt told him about the prep school that he went to called Hargrave Military Academy in Southern Virginia. So I went there. It was an awesome experience. Ended up getting a couple more inches in height, gained a little bit of weight. From there, went to Robert Morris FCS school up in Pittsburgh. Played my career there as a defensive back. Um, jumped around some of the indoor leagues after that. But also at Robert Morris, met some of my mentors, Tom Islinski, who really kind of allowed me to understand that this, the strength and conditioning, profession was a full profession and that you could make a living off of it. Um, so kind of did my own, quasi internship with him. Where basically I just didn't leave the weight room. Switched my majors from I was a double major in software and manufacturing engineering. Switched it just so I could spend a little bit more time in the weight room. From there, ended up the same time my older brother had opened up a place in Chicago, Illinois called Acceleration Sports Performance, where I'm currently at. So came out here, did another internship with him as he was starting up the business. Um, Thought that I didn't want to get into anything sport related as my football career was coming to an end. So went back home, sold cell phones at Verizon Wireless. At about a couple months later, my newest strength coach, Todd Hammer, back at Robert Morris, gave me a call. We started talking, kind of started, getting back in love with, the sport itself and strength and conditioning. So went back out there, did an internship at Robert Morris with him, then came back up to Chicago, did an internship with Northern Illinois. And then finally, at about that same time, my older brother had opened up a position for a head spot. So that was probably about 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. Jumped around as a high school strength coach a little bit for about a year or so while I was doing that. But essentially, I've been at Acceleration Sports Performance since then. We work with athletes starting at age 8. We work all the way to professional. We've been lucky enough to have multiple NFL, CFL, all different sports, basketball, baseball, MLB guys. We had our first Olympian gold medalist in soccer when during the Olympics. So that was probably, for us, one of our coolest things that we get. But biggest emphasis is that we really work on the athletic development side of athletes. Does make it really nice with our professional athletes as we start to get a little bit more in depth with skill acquisition and be able to take a little bit more than just the general physical side of sport, where our youth athletes tends to be a lot more physical and or general in nature.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that you and I have connected on, and how we've met over the past couple of years is talking about more than just the weight room stuff. I think there's a lot of gyms, a lot of facilities out there that can do that stuff and get people stronger, and it's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. And the field stuff is a little bit harder, and I think especially, I try and do more with the Gridiron Warrior stuff of being on the field and doing that stuff, and I think you've done a great job with that as well. That's where we've connected. But where I want to take the podcast today is you have this idea called FAST, and there's two T's on the FAST. So if
It's
you're
fast.
listening, it's FASTT. Okay.
Right.
Talk to us about that, and maybe some of the topics, because I know you're doing some speaking up in 2026 at some Glazer clinics and things like that. So talk to us about the philosophy of FAST.
Yeah, so and I think I'm a lot like you, and I think, in the idea of, we do a lot of research, we do a lot of study, and we do, a lot of mess around find outs of, our training. And there's always those aha moments where it's like, man, that's what it should have looked like, or that's, what it is. And one of my very first aha moments, and at the time it was one of those aha moments, but I didn't know where to take it, was James Smith, was at the time, he was at University of Pitt with Buddy Morris. There was a speaking engagement, and he basically just said, there's going to be a time and a place. If you think of the infancy of strength and conditioning and performance training as we see it now, right? We've, there's strength and conditioning that's way, BC, and we have all that. But in the idea that we see it now, it's in its, very infancy of how we're developing it. And I think one of the things he said that was just kind of like, man, that's true. And that's something where I wanted to always go to was, at some point, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, what we think strength and conditioning is, or performance training, or however you want to deem it, like we said in the beginning, it's going to be so different. And he had said, if you predict it, there isn't going to be a difference, or the athlete won't know the difference between, are they training for physical general, preparedness, or are they training for the sport? That there's this blendedness of, abilities between the physical, technical, the tactical, and even the cultural side of things. That there's going to be a moment in time where, you almost, in my opinion, you might look at it more like, a track and field coach, where, your shots go, that your throwing coach is also your strength coach. And so that kind of, always brought me down a rabbit hole of, having that in the back of my mind. But I also fully understood that sport in itself, you don't get faster, right? We play sport at, 85% of, maximal volume, maximal intensity. So it was like always one of those, like, man, I know that's the right way, but I don't really know how to get there. And as time grew and, mistakes were made and notes were taken, I think we finally, really started to understand, okay, I can do, and I'll use DB drill just because it's, most convenient for me to, talk on that side is, if I'm doing a traditional, what you would kind of deem, what a back pedal or W drill. Am I actually getting faster? Am I changing directions? What am I really doing in that drill? It's okay, I'm changing directions, I'm accelerating. Am I accelerating at a speed that's actually going to make me better? Probably not. Am I changing directions? Absolutely. But is there something more than I can do? And that's where, you start to tag in your agility. And so long-winded kind of approach, what, I started kind of playing with is a model that not only increases, the football side specifically, and that's the F in it, but then you've got the A, which is the agility side. I think, as we start to see it, and I talk in the private sector, that's really where I'm at. So I think not my anger, and I don't want to use the word anger, but I think my disdain for a lot of what's going on comes more from a private sector of, it becomes more of a moneymaker where you're getting a lot of, people that are just wanting to do things just to do things. So they're trying to create this hour of training to just do things. And a lot of it's just white noise or anything. And, we look at the agility side of it and you look at majority of football, that's all it is. And we know that agility is going to increase change of direction, but change of direction won't necessarily increase agility. And I think that, again, those are a very big aha moment to me of like, okay, how much traditional closed chain training do I really want to do? And then you've got obviously the speed side of it. And I think, that's a topic that, we all want to, be really, really invested in is, the jump between JV football and varsity football is speed of the game. The jump from varsity football to college football, speed of the game. Jump from college to pros, speed of the game. So speed is always going to be king. But you take those two and you can be as fast and change directions as much as you want. But if you don't have the technical and tactical, and those are the two T's into that, fast approach, you have nothing. And we've seen it, and I'm sure, a lot of coaches and practitioners see it. The guys that are, the weight room warriors that, can squat 1,000,000 pounds, or guys that can run 4.3s or 4.4s, but don't have this transfer. And the rabbit holes and the really big things that I think we've really been going down is how can we make our athletes fast? Fast slash fast enough? How can we make sure that they can change directions, but also be able to see the game? But then really put it into context of how do we bring in the technical side while understanding that technique is purely based on the tactical scheme. Within each tactical setting or tactical approach, and what that is a play call on the offense side, a defensive coverage. Your technique or the tools that you're actually going to use within that context is always going to change. So and we're nowhere near where we want to be with it. And I really kind of you know started down it as probably the last couple of years of really trying to accumulate all that stuff. Prior to it was putting guys in situations that were close to it, close to their sport. And then it's like, okay, we struggle on this side, so let's pull it back a little bit and work one facet of it, or one block of it. Okay, we've got successful at that. How do we progress it? And so now taking that model is how do we actually approach it in a very scalable way where we can take an 11 on 11 play and really pull it back to its infancy of what exactly the running styles are, the technique that we deem necessary for that tool, and how we can actually bridge that gap and layer our training to make sure that we're just not throwing crap at a wall, or we're not seeing what we're supposed to be seeing. So that's been the most fun big project that or the rabbit hole that's really gone down these last couple of months, and even probably year or so.
And when I hear all of that, I think the first word that comes to my head is efficiency. And I
Mhm.
think that's the thing. Part of football practice and part of, private sector training a little bit. I'm not going to call it babysitting, but part of it is the expectation is you have the kids after school from 2 to 4, and I think
Mhm.
sometimes coaches are like, I need to practice every day from 2 to 4. I need to fill up this time. I think you're slowly starting to see the revolution a little bit, right? With
Mhm.
Kurt over in Indiana. He's a big proponent of and he's not calling them short practices, he's calling them efficient
Mhm.
practices. And
Yeah.
I think when I'm looking at football, agility, speed, technical and tactical side of things, it's taking a look at every drill and everything that you're doing within a program and saying, "Is this the most efficient way to make a difference and make this person a better football player?" Is this
Exactly.
drill improving their speed? Is this going to make their power out? Those things. If it's checking that box, it's checking that box. If it's agility,
Mhm.
is this a drill? 5-10-5 is change of direction. It's not agility. If I want to make
Mhm.
them better at agility, am I putting them in a situation that is being efficient and making them, and then you get
Oh,
into the
yeah.
technical tactical. So I love that you mentioned the W drill because I think this is a great way to kind of show and hit some of the points that you're talking about here. You said the W drill, it's too slow because it doesn't mimic how fast you actually need to break and jump a route in game speed.
Mhm.
It's not reactive because it's pre-planned. You go from this cone to this cone to this cone to this cone, or the rough pattern is
Mhm.
pre-programmed. Um, Again, it's not technical because we haven't said anything. We haven't given them context of the situation where what side of the ball are you on right now? Like we haven't even
Mhm.
gone there, and then it's not tactical as well because there's way more that goes into breaking on a route than just the
Mhm.
footwork and the steps to it. So um, we know that it's not an efficient drill, and I think sometimes
Mhm.
and no knock to football coaches out there, they just don't know better. It's I've
Yeah.
learned to play the game this way. I know in a 2-hour practice I can fit these drills in. I know that our wide receivers or our DBs need to get better at backpedaling and breaking in and out of routes. I know a W drill has that incorporated, so I'm going to use that. They just don't know better. No knock to
Yeah.
them. So give us an example here, right? We identified that this drill is too slow. It's not reactive. It's not technical. Not tactical. How would you fix
Yeah.
the W drill if you were a coach was adamant about, "Hey, I love W drill. Tell me
Right.
how I can make it better."
And to preface that, and I go back to when we look at training our NFL guys, and I got really lucky that when I got to work with college NFL defensive backs right off the bat, so their need for learning how to come out of a break was minimal. They didn't need to know that, so I almost skipped those steps. And as I started kind of bringing it down and pulling it down to, our high school kids and even, some of our youth kids. And, I use the W drill and I make fun of the W drill a lot or just, very general drills. And it doesn't necessarily mean that W drill or that drill, there isn't a necessity out of it. Learning, within a very small window of degrees of freedom is usually the word that we're going to say, is how much freedom you're going to give that athlete. If you just want them to learn how to come out of a break, how to have a low clearance angle, so meaning that they're coming out, out of their break in a, I don't know, long or I'm sorry, strong projection. There's nothing wrong with that. But at some point, that ceases to get them better. So, and I'll kind of use my hands, and something that we'll use a lot with is a clock drill. So, if you kind of think of very basically, and Nick DeMarco had an amazing book called the Eight Vector Series that I absolutely love, and a lot of the stuff that we use with our
It's one of the
athletes
best books out there. I got to get Nick on
by
the
far.
podcast. I just saw him this past season. We went up and played there. He's the man. That thing
Awesome.
is awesome, and the philosophy behind it makes so much sense. I have an idea of where you're going, but keep going.
Absolutely. So, very generally speaking, and I'm going to use purely defensive backs right now. We can apply this to most skill positions. Is you can start them on a clock and kind of think of we backpedal. Very first angle that we're going to cut is straight down. Awesome. Let's get good at that. The next one that you're going to see, and think that, for a defensive back, that's just a hitch route. Then you've got what we'll just very easily deem a low angle. We can give it a percentage or a degree, but it's just coming up, driving at a lower angle. That's your slants. That's your quick outs, something along those lines. Then you've got a 90-degree angle, and then you've got a high angle, and then you've got a vertical or a 180-degree turn, where you're either, again, completely different conversation whether or not you backpedal or shuffle, but that full turn. So once we deem those are good enough, and yes, we always want perfect, but if you and I've wanted to do this with some of our pro athletes, is I want to record every single break they have of the same routes. And I guarantee if they do 100 different routes, they're going to break 100 different ways. So understanding there is degrees of freedom. So you don't need perfect. You need effective or efficient. Once we deem that, and for us, that would be just confidence, like a good confidence phase of learning how to get in and out of a break. That's going to be a lot where they make their money. But at the end of the day, like you just said, they're going to react off people. So, very simplistically speaking, if that's the drill that we want to work on, or getting them to react off a drill, we're going to go into what we'd call more of a consistency phase. And that's just where you're giving them one or two decisions to make where they get to have that decision. And the decision would be you have an offensive guy and a defensive guy. They're two decisions. So he's got 5 yards, he's got whatever he deems necessary. You work on two routes. You work on a low angle and a 90. So those are the only two routes that you work on. Nothing else. You get good at those two routes. And then you work on two more routes. And then you work on two more routes. And you can add some flavor. You can have, the athlete have some fun with it. Like our guys will, they'll do barrel rolls or like they'll just enjoy it, have fun. If we bring receivers in, you'll start to see them stem, they'll rock or step, they'll, really get into it. But it allows the decisions to happen at higher than game speed. So speed is happening higher than game speed. Decisions is happening higher than game speed because it's only two. As a defensive back, you're looking at, essentially you're looking at 10 routes, but your decisions really are about 3 to 4 within a play. So if we can pull back the decision making, now game speeds are starting to go a lot higher. Once we again deem those necessary, we might have some fun with it. You can choose from a low angle or a post. So now you're getting not only an athlete learning how to come down on a break, but also if he needs to open up into a break. So that's kind of where our our consistency phase. We're challenging the body to hold the positions in from our confidence phase. That's that traditional W drill or clock drill. Then we start to get into a little bit more what we call a true chaos phase. And I think that's where the individual side really starts to kind of produce itself depending on what those athletes need, what some of the technical side of it, or I'm sorry, the tactical side, but that's where you can give them three, four, five different routes at a certain time. You can pull back. You can, instead of having that receiver start at 5 yards, you can have them start at 10 yards or 12 yards. You can really play around with all the external variables that now help that or give the defensive back more context and variables to make more decisions. And that's, when we're just looking at that drill, that's how I would kind of add on to the W drill. I would, and now, you can use that for in season, right? We've got a team that does a lot of RPOs, so that DB is going to be coming up a lot. Now you can work those angles. You can have that receiver work 1,000 different types of routes, and it's still coming out at a low angle or, what have you. And that's where now you can, layer those local drills into a bigger context of more of a global drill, which would be your 7-on-7, your run game, your team training, anything like that. So that's kind of how we bridge the gap from this very robotic, these are the techniques that they need, all the way into this is what the game looks like. And again, I think both of you and I are on the same page of we tend to have a lot of athletes, and I know a lot of high school coaches have a ton of athletes. So being able to scale those are really big. We literally ran that drill on Wednesday. We had 15 guys running at the exact same time, 16 guys, somewhere around there. All of them did it. We had two groups going. It was cool to see those conversations start to happen by those athletes where, and I take a very big kind of rugby approach of allowing, or, a soccer approach where you allow your guys to kind of figure things out. You'll bring them in, you'll talk to them, but you'll let them do those things, and then you'll kind of pull them back, make them understand what they're doing. But we were able to get 16 guys at a time with just two drills running, and the guys knew exactly what they were supposed to do, and that was their first time running it.
Quick break. This episode is powered by Endorphin. Endorphin is a performance nutrition company built for high school, college, or professional athletes who take their training seriously. Their patented FinTech bottles right here come preloaded with clean, third-party certified, so NSF, protein. All you have to do is add liquid, add water, add milk, whatever, shake it and go. No blender, no mess, no excuse for not getting your protein in. It's trusted by over 150 college and pro teams because it works in actual training environments, on the road, in the weight room, post practice. When recovery matters most, Endorphin is there. So if you need a discount, you want team pricing, reach out to me or check out Endorphin online and tell them that you're interested in team pricing. All right. Now back to the show. And it's one of those things, once you've started to find a way to figure it out and set it up, it's like you can get the things, if you want it for a conditioning effect, you can get it to go that way. If you want it to be high intent with good rest in between, you can set it up that way once you've got it in place. But my head is spinning here of where I want to go with this. But I mean, defensive players, I think that is such a huge piece that is missing, is that reactive component, because everything they do is reactive. Offensively, I'm thinking about, I had Tony Villani on the podcast not too long ago, another private sector guy, and his stuff is awesome as well. I mean, he's got his break plant separate, he's got his steps there, and he'll always
I
talk
didn't
about,
realize how big in the agility world he was in.
yeah. So
And I know he touches down that a lot.
I mean, his thing with agility is if you have, decent footwork, you can create, once you have a step of separation, that's all you need in the NFL, because one step is going to turn into 2 and 3 very quickly. But the thing with offensive players is that they're always in control. They decide where they're going to go. They decide where they're going to plant their feet. They decide how many steps they can take to plant if they're really coordinated and skilled enough. So he'll talk about break, plant, separate, and you can get. But defensively, you don't know when the break and the plant are going to necessarily happen. So you have to. And if you don't work those skills, you don't work the reaction, the vision component, the things like that in the offseason, the winter, that's when they look rusty. And then, I've seen such a difference in our guys with not even just tackling, because you can't tackle people in the winter and in the off season. I have to wait till spring ball, but we can track And that's the biggest thing is we've quadrupled the amount of tracking drills that we do so that our
Yeah.
defensive players have a feeling of where they are in space. They're using their eyes in a way that's different than just pure running.
Mhm.
Um, that's such a huge piece there. So I guess when you're thinking about reactive drills for defensive players, again, as a whole, what are some other
Mhm.
things, especially vision? Because again, I'm thinking about things. I love 7-on-7. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people hate 7-on-7 because they're like, oh, it's taken away from. I think it's great because it's live reps, live bullet. You're getting that.
Yeah.
I think a big issue with 7-on-7 is the lack of run game and the lack of RPO. So you develop these
Absolutely.
really bad habits on the back end, and then you wonder why your DBs can't get they can't fit in the run game, and they look soft in there, and it's like
Oh, yeah.
they're not, you know,
And it
you did 7-on-7 all summer. You didn't do anything to have them react to the run game component or the
oh,
RPO
yeah.
component. So, let's just
And
talk
even on
reaction.
so even on that side, and you there was something, and again, memory doesn't serve me right now, but there's something that you posted on a tracking drill, and again, it was one of those like, man, that makes a lot of sense. And I know I brought something up to you, and again, I talk to you all the time, so I don't know when it happened, but then I had a couple of our CFL linebackers in. I was just kind of talking to them about what I saw. I probably showed, the drill to them. And that opened up a really good conversation with Andy Ryland, who for me is kind of one of the people that really kind of helped navigate, what drills have carryover, what drills are like, that did nothing. But we're kind of looking at, especially like you said, tackling is a really big thing. And, you can block it, you can do, especially at the college side and even on the high school side. You can do your tracking drills, you can do that, you can do a lot of contact prep, you can do all that stuff, but at the end of the day, they still have to be able to get into their positions. So something that, we started getting into, and I think I talked to you about, is breaking our tracking drills from inside out, outside in, a chase, or head up. So we look at, working on purely just getting and I'm going to use kind of how we deem it, the confidence side of just getting them to be able to track, inside out. Okay, cool. That's awesome. We can do that. Now let's give them an option to work inside out or head up. Okay, now that we're giving that two-way go. Okay, now let's really put it into, did something happen? We'll call it NPCs, non-playable characters of guys that are just kind of eyewash. Did something happen? That linebacker had to go over, so now he can't go inside out. He's back in the chase. So when it comes to like the reaction, and I think we might be able to better term reaction as decision making, or the decisions that are happening within inside of a game, and the faster you can make those decisions. And you look at a linebacker, their biggest decision is, do I go over or under a guy? If I go, am I going to have the time to go under a guy? If I miss, I'm going to get yelled at. So now if I go over, that's another 3, 4, 5 yards that they're going to make. So that for us is a really big um, rock that we try to get, especially with our younger guys, of getting them, with some more of the zone reads. When we're looking at more, giving them more two gap responsibilities of how they, are they going to fail, or do they need to start scraping, or going down. Um, so when we're looking at, developing that reaction side, I think it's having the ability to understand that everything they're doing is a decision. And the faster that they can make those decisions, that's what we will now deem as, game speed. You can have all the speed in the world, but if you can't make those decisions faster, and I use, being in Chicago, it was Brian Urlacher. He was always deemed that he was a 4.95 flat guy, but he would be anywhere you needed him to be. He just knew where the ball was going. And my older brother, who, like I said, played fullback, he said, and I always ask who was the best linebacker you always played. He'd name these guys that rarely ever knew, either A, because they couldn't stay in the league because they just hit people hard, or because they were just so smart at what they did. He's like, there are guys that would literally tell everybody what they were doing defensively before the play even happened. Like, that's how wicked smart a lot of these guys are becoming.
We've got guys like that too, where it's like, I've seen kids that can cover sideline to sideline and they have raw
Mhm.
speed. And it's like, yep, there's a reason why you're on the field. It's because you have raw
Yeah.
safety cover. But then there are the kids that don't have that, but they make just as
Mhm.
many plays, just as many tackles, and it's because they have that next component of they've watched enough film. They have enough feel of the situation. It's not just that they know where the ball's going. They know that going over the top is gonna be a bad decision to get there. So, like, they have
Mhm.
pre-thought those things out, and they have this next level ability to see things with their eyes and their and again, the vision thing is something I gotta bring somebody on the podcast and so I can learn more, but it's something that there's so much to see, and the kids that can see it
Mhm.
all very quickly and make a decision are the kids that get to the football first.
I think Jeff Moyer in Pittsburgh does a really good job
Yeah,
with
he's
all their
phenomenal.
vision stuff. Yeah, that was again another. Andy said that, and that was one of those like that. Now it's like everything now starts to become an if-then sentence. If this receiver does this, then I do this. If this receiver does this, my eyes go to another receiver. So like that to me, like and like you said, I love like the idea of the vision side of it.
I love the 1v1 in the box stuff, and it's something that if I took everything I've done the past 5 years and I only pick one thing, it's 1v1 in the box. I think there's so much value there. I think adding the eye wash by just adding even just a trash can in there, right, is now for the wide receiver and for the DB, it's or for the linebacker, wherever it is, there's so much more thinking and processing that gets involved. The creativity goes through the roof, but now the kid has to decide, do I undercut the trash can? Do I play over the top?
Mhm.
Knowing the person across from you, and he's a speedster, he's gonna try and take that thing outside. So you should play over the
Uh,
top. And like there's so many things that go into that. I love that piece. But one thing that we added this past year was I hate tempo runs. That's just my thing, and they're boring, but they're necessary. And I battle the need for them all the time. So we do DeMarco's 8 vector conditioning, and we'll use that as
Okay.
a good aerobic base. But
Mhm.
I still will do some traditional tempo runs. But we added some eye shift stuff this year where on the whistle they start the rep, but they're looking to this sideline, and I'm holding up a 1, a 2, or a 3, and they're yelling it out as they run because you shouldn't be
Mhm.
running so hard that you can't talk. You should be able to
Right.
and then when they get to the 50, their eyes would have to flip to the other sideline and find the other coach, and I made sure that we were both moving around a little bit, so we're never in the same spot the whole time. Same
Yeah.
thing, they're calling up the number, and then we got to the point where, I would be here calling out whatever the offensive signals are for whatever we do, whatever formationally.
Mhm.
Maybe we're calling in 12 personnel, and I'm holding the sign up for that. And then I'd have an intern calling out the defensive side of like, okay, well, we're gonna. So now it was like even more getting closer to football because that's what you do, right? Is
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
you jog back to the middle of the field, you look to the sideline, you get your call, and then you gotta line up
Mhm.
and shift your eyes, and then go find, you know, what
Oh,
did they line up in there? I just saw that I'm supposed
yeah.
to play this, but what are they lined up in? Because that's gonna change that. So there's so much there, and again, if you're only doing, 5, 10 fives, and, don't get me wrong, I love hard things, I love to compete, I love to do that stuff,
Right.
but the more you can find ways to, like we talked about at the beginning, bridge the 2 together. I'm not a football
Mhm.
coach, I know I'm not a football coach, but I'm trying to incorporate more football into what I do in ways that make sense for me without being over the top, because it
Oh,
is gonna
yeah.
show up. It's gonna show up at practice,
Mhm.
and it's gonna show up on Friday and Saturday nights, so yeah,
Yeah.
that stuff to me is like, I can't get enough. I'm trying to get Andy to
And
come
I
out to our summer seminar as well. I gotta make sure I lock him
okay.
in, but if he
Yeah,
comes
he's
out for a
awesome.
day, it's over. I don't there's so much
Oh,
I'm gonna
yeah.
learn
No,
from him.
he's incredible. And I think, even getting back to what you said as far as, and I think our job as strength coaches, especially in, the collegiate side, and even in the private sector side or, for the high schools, that summer program is, if you can ask the DB coach or receiver coaches, hey, what is something that you would love to not do day one, day three, or week one that allows you to progress a little bit quicker? What would those be? Cool. Can we sit down and have a conversation? I want to know. I don't want to know your sport. I don't, and I work probably just as much in soccer as I do in football. And I know enough in soccer to have a conversation. I understand the terminology, but I don't understand the semantics of it at all. I still have no idea. But, getting the coach and the rapport to the, sport coach and the strength coach and said, hey, I just want to make your job easier. If I can already come out with, the traditional W drill or whatever, what if I already get that done? Does that allow you to progress earlier? come fall camp? Well, yeah, it does. All right, cool. Can we sit down and you just give me the 101 of that position so I can better understand it, so I can help with that terminology. Again, I don't want to overstep, but I also can blend to make your job a little bit easier. Again, when we go back to that original James Smith statement, I think that's where the continuum can really get cool if the coaches all essentially throw out an eagle and say, okay, this is what we want. This is how we're going to get there. How do we do it together?
I think that's the big piece is dropping the ego and saying, as a strength coach, are there ways that I can listen and make them better football players and change what I've been doing, because there's probably a way to increase the amount of transfer that we see on the field. I think football coaches on the same line need to be open and willing to change what they do as well. And I think, it
Mhm.
goes both ways. Sometimes football coaches have a hard time changing what they're doing, but you know, if you have a conversation and say, well, I do this drill because I want them to get faster at this and this, but coach,
Mhm.
like, the nice thing about GPS now is you can show them numbers to back it up and say, coach,
Exactly.
you're not operating at a speed that you think you're operating at, Uh,
Yeah.
or like, is this really, like I other than the conditioning and getting them to sprint really hard, like pursuit drill is my drill that I'm like, there's nothing, we're not pursuing anything, we're sprinting.
Yeah.
It's like they're pre-designated cones, like, so the kids, they're
Uh,
not even reacting off anything. It's pure
no.
sprinting. But if you want
Yeah.
them to get faster, might not be a bad speed drill. You
Yeah,
could be getting
exactly.
them,
Yeah,
you're getting them to go full speed.
exactly.
So, give and a
That's
take there.
meeting
And
them halfway. If
yeah,
you can meet coaches halfway, and that took me a long time to really learn was, both with athletes and coaches of, they're going to have their quips just like we all do, or things that we have, that a hill that we may die on is
I
one that
always
we
say
put our
we
foot
don't
down.
we don't ever want them to come in the weight room and say, "Why are you doing this? This is
Hmm.
stupid." And we're like, "Well,
Yeah,
we didn't go, you didn't go to school for this. You don't have the background that I have." But then we get upset when we see things at football practice, and it's like that's the same
exactly.
thing. It's like, that's like them coming in the weight
Literally.
room. So you got to be able to work with people and have that conversation, which is huge. And
Exactly.
it's hard for some people to have that. Let's hit one
Oh,
last topic here while we finish this up,
yeah.
and because we mentioned this before the podcast, but talking about DB's got to be physical, and that's something
Hmm.
that skill players in general can sometimes struggle with. So, how are you developing some physicality, whether it's getting fit in the run game or building the ability to jam some people at the line of scrimmage? Let's talk physicality when it comes to those skill guys, and how you're building that over
Yeah.
at Athlete Sports Performance or Acceleration Sports
And
Performance.
before the podcast, so quick experience story of my training partners were a my older brother who was a 250-pound fullback, and a 310-pound D end. Those were essentially my training partners. So we always had to like just I mean both of them were obviously always physical, and I was I played my career usually between 150 and 180. And so they always wanted to hit things and be very physical. So I learned a lot of, my technique from a fullback, or I learned a lot of my skill, my handwork from the DN, Brian Schaefering was the DN that I worked with or trained with. You could put a penny and flip it in the coin and he could hit it 100 times out of 100. I've never seen a handwork so accurate with that. And again, it's one of those moments now that I'm a coach, I look back and I'm like, that's what helped get him to the successful career. How quickly, if someone would throw a hand out, how quickly he could, swipe it away, or if he needed to get inside someone. So when we talk physicality of it, we start very general. We do a lot of crawls, a lot of, partner grappling. We'll do wrestling type drills. You can call them mat drills, you can call them whatever. We'll try to contextualize it and, format it in a way that's a little bit more apprehensible for, the sport, or, makes it make a little bit more sense for the sport. But then we'll really start getting into, our mirror drillers full contact. We'll do a lot of, if, especially with viewers, Louis Simmons would always be high force to high velocity. So, something static. So not really moving, and really bring in a lot of high force type movement. So, we learned that if we could even just engage somebody right away and then let them go. Or we'll do something that we'll just call walk ball. And we got it from a bunch of our kids because they'd always play it during the sidelines whenever they're having fun. Literally, they just walk a route. I'm like, okay, what if we take that aspect of it because I love it. It keeps them healthy, keeps them safe. They get to hand fight like crazy. They get to learn where they need to hit. They need to learn the angles, but while all doing that, they also have to understand that at some point there's going to be a high velocity to it. So we'll go, a walk ball drill. So where they're just walking, walking, walking. And then at some point they sprint and then they get those two options. Do I run out? Do I run up? So now you're getting these athletes that not only have to be very, very physical at the line of scrimmage, but they're also understanding the bigger picture. I think too many times we're one or the other, especially, and again, I'll talk DB a little bit more. So your DBs feel like they have to just beat the heck out of the guy at the line of scrimmage. Well, if we do that, we're not looking at the second, third orders of effect. If I, sacrifice for a jam and then he beats me deep, I've done nothing. Or the other side of, I get so scared that he's going to beat me deep that I just take off. I came from a program that we had to jam. I lost a job because I had a game-winning interception, and I missed my jam on that game-winning interception, and the defensive coach sat me. That's how important getting hands-on was for us. But so we have the ability to get them in these high force moments, and we'll call it, professional competitiveness. You want to be competitive, but not at the sake of an athlete. So, we've had a lot of really good success with it. It's funny. Our high school kids do awesome. Our college kids do awesome doing it. Our professional athletes hurt each other. They will be so competitive. They could care less what happens. They just need to win the game. So
I
we
think
always
it's
say we use them.
obviously I love contact prep and I love walk ball. We've gone back and forth on walk ball. I have a
Hmm.
whole progression for it now. Our skill guys, whenever I tell them we're doing a walk ball type day, they get fired up for it. But it is this honestly, just call it roughhousing. Like kids don't get to roughhouse anymore. So it's an
Yeah.
opportunity, controlled roughhousing, and they're not going to get in trouble for it. I grew up,
Hmm.
and when I was in elementary school, we played at recess. We went out in the street, we played street ball, and it was hands on. It was physical,
Oh,
2 hand touch, and you end up on the street a couple times, and it is what it. But now they
mhm.
don't have that. You have 7-on-7.
Yeah.
It's tag off, and that's an issue with tag off in general. That's a different conversation for a different day. But
Yeah.
there you're not getting enough physicality by just tagging off, and you're creating bad habits by doing that too.
Hmm.
So allowing this little bit of physicality, I mean, we make it a point of pride. Contact prep has been a foundation of what we do for a long time. So our kids
Yeah.
know they're going to do that. All right, my skill guys know I'm going to get on them, and honestly, they work harder than sometimes the big guys. The big guys are because they've been doing it for so long, they know how to lean and know how to be a little lazy and make it look like they're working hard. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
see I see through that
I
too.
see
But
what you're doing.
but our skill guys, they take pride in it. They like to beat each
uh,
other up in a way. And our number one rule is we say no hands to the face, no hands to the family down low. Those are face
that's
and
perfect.
family are the two things we
Still
got to
that one.
protect.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
exactly.
other than
No,
that,
I
I mean,
love that.
it's honor system. It's the same as pickup basketball. The
Oh,
kids
yeah.
the kids know like what's clean and what's
Yeah.
fair and what's not. And
Yeah. And it's
to be honest, I
fun,
love
and
it more than
kids
pickup
love it.
basketball. The only time we get hurt in the off season is with pickup basketball because it
Yep.
just like it's so not what it's not their sport, it's not what they do. They jump, they land on an ankle, they roll it. I'm telling you, I've done it, and I love games, right? But I will
Hmm.
once every couple years be like, all right, fine, I'll let you guys play pickup basketball as like a fun activity.
Hmm.
And I get a kid hurt every time they roll their ankle doing that. So
Oh,
I've retired pickup
yeah.
basketball of any shape or form, not even knockout. We're not even doing knockout
Yeah. Nothing.
because I can do 2 hours of walk ball and all those things, and
Hmm.
nobody gets hurt. And the second I
Yep.
do anything with a basketball, somebody gets hurt instead.
Uh,
So,
Somebody's gonna try
uh,
to do a 360 dunk, hang on the rim, and then land on somebody.
it's not even that. It's like they're just standing there collecting a rebound, and
Yeah.
I'm like, "What are we doing?" So,
What's
oh,
going
man.
on?
Coach, this was great. Obviously, take a minute here. Tell us about where you're gonna be for the Glazer clinics, and then if people wanna learn more from you, they want more information from you, how can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my next speaking engagement, I should say, is in Chicago. I believe on the 7th of February.
I can find it. I'll put it in the show notes and stuff too.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. But those are the topics, and I'm recording them. I'll put them out there. But first one's going to be, and I had to throw a hot button out there was, game speed versus track speed. And the conversation is going to be, yes, we can be fast as anything, but how do we make sure that it transfers? So that's going to be a topic. Next topic is going to be just kind of what we talked about today, how you can, organize your drill sets to make sure that we're actually having carryover, but then also how to create custom drills that are very individualized to your team or your athlete. And then the one that I'm most excited about that's probably, putting the most work together is, taking kind of what we are seeing now at the NFL level and a lot of the collegiate levels and periodizing or kind of creating a performance-based practice structure where we're getting everything that the coaches want, but we're organizing and simplifying it to make sure that the athletes are game ready by Friday. So that one's probably going to be most fun. I have realized it's by far so much harder to worry and do the logistics with that from the high school level to definitely give me a lot more respect for coaches of that sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. Optimal is a very wide scale, but we're trying to put together a practice structure that we're knocking everything off. We're checking off density work, so the conditioning side. We're knocking off the high speed work. We're also making sure that all of our athletes are both technically, tactically prepared for game day. So that one's probably going to be the most fun that I'm excited to speak on. You can find me all socials. If you type in my last name, Niklos, I think they're all different. I did a terrible job selling when I first started up social medias. I think it's Coach Niklos on Twitter. I think it's Niklos11 on
I did the same thing.
Instagram.
Don't worry.
Yeah, easiest way is email me. You'll see if you ever want to see any of the drills. It's both on both of those, but you can email me Mike at accelerationpro.com. So ACCELERATIONPRO.com.
Coach, this was great. I'm so happy we were finally able to do this. We'll definitely do a part 2 someday down the road.
Man. Well, man, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. And thank you guys for listening to the Gridiron Warrior podcast. We'll catch you on the next one. If you enjoyed this podcast and you want to keep getting better, I encourage you to check out my new community, the Gridiron Warrior Insiders. Got it right here on the phone. The app is clutch. There's so many things in there that I think you'll find valuable. We have the weekly film study where you can go live with me, ask any questions you want. There's no Q&A, no big deal. I always have a topic that we're going to hit on every single week, and we record those too if you can't make it. With the Wildcat webinar, that's where I call somebody else in to run the offense, and they come in and they bring a presentation about something that they're an expert in and give us some fresh insight, new information. I have unreleased podcasts. There's about 10 or 15 that haven't gone live yet. You can listen to them early before anyone else. We have the equipment room, so discounts, whether it's Train Heroic, Plyomat, OVR, or even my own courses. You have discounts in the equipment room. Okay, the free safety, anything that I want to throw in there, bonus programs for yourself as a coach, you name it, it's in there. And we have over 50 coaches right now that are helping each other. So we post questions and coaches will work together and provide insight and share information because that's what it's all about is coaches getting better. So if you want to check that out, the links are in my bio, the links at the end of this podcast. Check it out there, Gridiron Warrior Insiders.